Frank Velasquez, you and I have known each other 21 years now.
Yeah, good amount of time.
And I think the beauty of the work that we all do is that, it can be a decade between seeing people and it feels like no time has passed. But I'm thinking of my memories of you and, I was hired by the Pittsburgh Pirates in 2005, spring training of 2005, and you were the head strength coach in the big leagues then. What year in the big leagues was that for you?
'05 was just my second year in the big leagues. '03 was my first, so '03, '04, and then the start of my third.
Okay. Okay.
Yep.
And you had worked for the Rangers before that in player development?
Yes, for 7 years. 4 years as a minor league athletic trainer, and then my last 3 years, I was the strength and conditioning coordinator for the minor leagues. So I saw every level of baseball from Latin America to the big leagues. So that was very educational and put a lot of miles in on Delta that year, those 3 years.
Yeah, and you do have that unique, I think it's a pretty unique background. There's not a lot of people that were an athletic trainer and a strength coach, correct? Or are there becoming more of them?
Probably no, there wasn't back then. We call them dual certified guys that were ATC CSCSs, and there might have been 4 or 5 of them in the big leagues when I was there.
Did you make
Um,
a conscious decision to switch to strength coaching though?
it's a great question, and there's a story behind it. I was at the athletic trainers PBATS convention, and I was hanging out with Danny Wheat, who was our major league strength coach at the time, and here I was, a first, second year, third year minor league athletic trainer, and we're having some adult beverages, and Larry Starr comes up, and Larry Starr was a very veteran athletic trainer, and he was with the Marlins at the time. But Larry Starr was with the Big Red Machine with Sparky and Pete and Concepcion, that whole Hall of Fame team. And I grew up in Michigan, so Sparky was my guy. So we're sitting there, and he's asking me a bunch of questions. I'm on the moon, cloud nine, with these veteran athletic, major league athletic trainers where I want to get to. And he says, well, what are your plans in the off season? And I said, well, I'm thinking about getting into PT school, to help boost my athletic training background. And he leans into me and says, nah, he says, you got to go become a strength coach. He says these guys are lifting more weights than ever, and it's new, it's up and coming. These strength coaches are going to be needed in the major leagues. Physics, we can do what physical therapists do in the big leagues. They're we have that skill set. You have that skill set already. You're only going to get better at it. But if you really want to make a difference, instead of getting that PT next to your name, get your CSCS. And I took it to heart, and it was a shorter route. And I always liked strength training. I always liked lifting weights and played that part when I was with my minor league teams before we had strength coaches. So I did. That's when I turned the other way and got my strength certification.
Yeah. Before strength coaches, you were also probably the clubby half of the time too as a trainer, right?
And the traveling secretary and the team mom and the team psychologist.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you know this, but I grew up in the game as a bat boy. I was a minor league bat boy when I was in high school for an A-ball club.
Oh, wow.
The trainer had to do the laundry on the road.
Oh,
And so
yeah.
when I turned 16, the trainer asked me if I wanted to be the clubby on the road. And so as soon as school got out, I went on every road trip the rest of the summer, and they would drop me off at a laundromat in the morning, and I would do all the wash and fold all the uniforms and everything and take it back to the hotel, and guys would get their stuff there. But there was no visiting clubhouse guy, and the trainer had to do the laundry.
Yeah. No, the game's evolved quite a bit in the sense of, in regards to a supplement staff or support staff, all the way down to the minor leagues. So that's awesome. I mean, that's trusting parents to send their
Oh, I know. We talk about that all the time about like, would you let your sons go on a road trip and room with 19 to 24-year-olds from, all over the United States and backgrounds in different countries and I mean, thinking about, being 14 years old and going on a road trip as a bat boy and, after the game in Bakersfield, the only thing that's open is Denny's. And so it's like you're in a Denny's at 12:30 at night crossing a highway to get there from a motor lodge, my mom loves baseball and loves sports, and she was always, I mean, there was never a hesitation, there was never an argument, it was like, go, I can't believe this is great. So, we were very lucky in that way. And I think the world was very different then too, that it was okay to do that. But I couldn't ever see, sending my oldest is 13 right now. I couldn't imagine putting him on a bus right now and be
On
like,
a
"See you in a
7 day
week."
road trip.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's education. We've talked about this before, Jeff. I mean, the educations, the degrees we have, um, early on, they don't carry their weight in a baseball clubhouse. I mean, sometimes we're the most educated, but we don't have that baseball education. But you, with that position, even as a middle school, bat boy, that's baseball education where you're riding buses and living the ins and outs and the Denny's and the Waffle Houses and the 7-Elevens where you're getting your meal at 1 in the morning before heading on another 4 hour trip.
Yeah. And I think that's right. I think I've always felt comfortable in a clubhouse, and I think players can tell when you feel comfortable in a clubhouse and when you don't. And so I think that was something that I was very lucky to have developed, and really have gotten to live the minor league life when I was in high school.
Yeah, absolutely. The ability to navigate a major league clubhouse or even a spring training they don't teach that in the book. Those are trial and error and life experiences. So I'm certain that sets you apart, and I think maybe help pave the road for some acceptance, because you knew how to navigate that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. All right, well, so we are close to the World Baseball Classic starting, and you are leaving. What'd you say? Sunday you're leaving?
Flying out Sunday for Miami, and we start in Vero Beach
Okay, which is a
for our
great.
team workouts with Team Nicaragua. I'll be with this year. So 2017, I was out of the game, and Jim Leland, I guess before 17, Jim Leland was named the manager of Team USA, and lives in Pittsburgh. I know Jim because I trained his son Patrick after I got out. Actually, while I was still with the Pirates, Patrick Leland, who's now a minor league manager in the White Sox organization, would come into PNC and we would train him. Classic Jim. He comes into my office and Patrick's sitting there and he's talking to me like Patrick's not even there. Like, the kid's got a chance. He's just got to get stronger. He's got some skills, but he's soft in the middle. I'm looking at him like, well, he's right here. Anyhow, that's how our relationship started. And when Jim was named manager, he was told that he needed a strength coach. So he asked me if I would be the strength coach for Team USA. And while I was doing backflips and that was my first go with the WBC, and we won the gold medal that year. The only time the USA's won a gold medal in the history of the WBC, so it's very special. Had an outstanding experience, and for me, Jeff, that kind of put a cap on my baseball career. I never got to pop champagne, when I was in the big leagues with the Pirates, and but we did pop some champagne. And granted, it wasn't a 9 month grueling schedule to win a World Series, but it was about a 5 week run where we had some of the best players in the world come together, and we had to become a team very fast, and huge responsibilities to help get these guys back to their respective organizations healthy, so they can get on with their major league seasons. So I did that in 17, 20. There was no WBC. 23, I was assigned with Nicaragua. Had a great time with them. And I stayed on in Miami as a site supervisor because in 23, not every team had a major league experienced strength coach. So they kept me there to work with some of the major league players that were on the teams that came into the semifinals and finals. And now this year I'm still with Nicaragua, but glad to say that every team has a major league strength coach, major league athletic trainer, some major league staff as well. So seeing the evolution of the WBC, and but so exciting. I mean the flavors from all over the world coming in, and I was actually in Taiwan for a WBC qualifier in 2025 in March, just last year. So that was a great experience, and I'd never been to the Far East. Um, but just the passion. I mean, we know baseball in the United States, and there's fans, and they get happy and they get sad, but this international flavor, man, it's from first pitch to last pitch, it's loud, and it only gets louder. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So with Nicaragua, what percentage of the roster are, forget about big leaguers, but what percentage of them are coming from pro teams?
About 25%.
Okay.
And most of them are minor leaguers. In 23, I had two major league pitchers and about five minor league players. This year, looking at the roster, two major league, one's a pitcher, one's a position player, and then again, five or six minor league players with different organizations. So about 5 to 7 of the 25 on the team.
And the rest of that roster is playing somewhere. They're playing in Mexico or they're playing in Nicaragua. Or they're still playing one way or another, or are there guys that are, retired from playing, but they come out of retirement just for WBC?
Mostly with Nicaragua, Jeff, they're playing in their professional league. Um, I want to say 85% of them are from Nicaragua, playing Nicaragua. Some will play in Japan, and then we got the ones that play in pro ball in the United States.
So how does that make for a different strength coaching challenge with that kind of diversity of athlete?
Sure. I mean, it's still the baseball player, and I approach it just like I do when I was with the Pirates. I'm a service industry, so they introduced me as part of the support team, and some of the guys know me now because of 23, because Nicaragua was one of the teams in Taiwan, so we were all hugging and they were happy to see me, and now I'm with them again. So but in 23, it was I had to get to develop relationships
Mhm.
quickly, which is, your expertise is how do we just start a conversation and engage, and because you well know that the players don't care what you know until they know that you care. And they needed to know that I was on their team, and even though I'm not from Nicaragua and I have no Nicaraguan blood, I'm Latin American, and but those are the things that we did, is just to try to develop those relationships.
And so then, when you're done with WBC, tell us what you're coming back to.
Come back to my non-baseball life. I'm the director of sports performance for the Allegheny Health Network in Pittsburgh, really Western PA. The Allegheny Health Network is a network of 12 hospitals from Erie to the Pittsburgh area. So it's Western Pennsylvania. There's four facilities now that I've built in the 10 years I've been here that are designed to work with our active adults, athletes of all levels, from the major leagues, professional elite, to the kids just getting started, and to a parent who's never lifted a weight, to our developing youth, our long-term athletic development program. Work with physical therapists, strength coaches, recovery specialists, and I'm the director of the program. A little bit of my time is doing evaluations and some hands-on, some injury assessment, but most of my time is managing my performance teams, making sure that they have what they need, that they're in a good place so that they can deliver, their skill set every day that they need to. Um, you know, the experience comes from being in pro ball and coming from the University of Michigan, being part of high profile athletic programs and knowing what it takes to develop from the sports medicine piece, the strength training piece, the recovery piece, mental skills, nutrition, um, yeah, all that goes into it. And I had the luxury of living that life for all those years. And my vision was to help bring it out to the masses. When I was in baseball, I got to travel, and I went to API, which is now Exos, went to IMG academies, and got to see this done at a high level in the private sector. So I knew what I wanted to do when that day came, when I got out of the game. But that's what I do now for AHN. I did it for 5 years on my own, and then Dr. DeMeo and Dr. Snell, they were our medical directors when we were with the Pirates, and they didn't have anything like this for their post-op UCLs, post-op ACLs, their their kid that had pitcher little league shoulder and little league elbow and tennis elbow and golfer's elbow. So they brought me on to develop that, to build that program within the hospital network.
That's awesome. So you're, I mean, it's the how much baseball is in that and how much other sport? And then it sounds like there's a lot of people that don't even play a sport.
Exactly. When I got out and I owned my own business, I was seeing a lot of baseball. That was my reputation. Those are the doctors that sent me, and they came to see Frank. Over time, they came to my facility, not necessarily to see Frank. Still a lot of baseball. But what I really loved about being out of the game is I got to work with other animals. I call them animals. Ballet, BMX, cricket, soccer, men's, women's, boys, girls, that couch to 5K, that first time 5K runner, someone training to do a tough mudder, ex-athletes, never been athletes, grandparents that just want to be able to lift their grandkids without pain. So anything that the weight room is very versatile, and if you know how to navigate it, it can really help reduce the risk of injury and enhance performance. That's really what we do. And I think we've talked about this in our past conversations, is now that I'm in my mid 50s, I'm looking at longevity. And we have a specialty on that where we're getting these 50s and 60s and 70-year-olds that find us through physical therapy because they've been injured, and then they're introduced to strength, and they're drinking the Kool-Aid, man, and they're our best clients, and they feel it's like the fountain of youth. So, we're doing lots of great impactful work. With baseball and more without, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean that sounds good to me. I'm interested in the longevity for myself. And I personally I've always been a runner. We were just talking about the winter that we've been experiencing, and it's not really possible to be a runner in places where it's cold and it snows. So like I mean I think a lot of my audience would be very interested in hearing a couple things about like what can you be doing during these winter months.
Sure. I mean, you have your treadmills, but I think we're talking about outdoor running where the risk versus reward, it's just too icy, and there's no banks, there's no sidewalks anymore. It's covered with snow, so it's very dangerous. But still need to continue to strength train. A lot of runners don't strength train. My goal, and I've run 4 marathons, and I learned this early on, was to run as little as possible to be able to achieve the goal I wanted to achieve as a runner. So that meant strength training, do some cross training. So if I can't run, can I get into a pool? Can I get on a spin bike? The Pelotons are very popular now. You got to find other ways. So are the concept rowers, the ways to get your heart rate up and down to bridge the gap until you get your feet on the pavement again. So just mixing in some of that flavor to get you through those weeks or a couple months.
And do you ever do any corporate fitness kind of programs where like a company might hire you to advise people on how to be more fit in their work days?
Absolutely. We have over the years in person where we would go in during lunchtime, and myself or some of my coaches, they had a space. We kind of helped them equip it, and then we would run small group training in the corporation. But nowadays, doing a lot more presentations, on stress management. We call it office wellness. With the simple bands that we use, you see the major league guys use on the sidelines, we can use in the office. And getting these people on their all fours in a bear crawl position and have them pop their knees off the ground and start to bear crawl a little bit in their office, usually with the doors closed. Um, but so much benefit that you can do in your living room or in an office that you don't have to go to a fancy weight room or performance training center to work on some stability foundation things.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned stress management in there, and I think that's something that I think there's a lot of overlap for us. So I'd love to talk more about that and hear what you see and what you think is important right now.
Well, I'm gonna ask you a question before I go on and ramble on about this, because this is your wheelhouse. Is when you came into pro ball, and correct me if I'm wrong, the Pirates was your first position in pro ball, correct?
That's right. That's
As
right.
a mental skills coach.
Yep. My
You know,
entry into Major League Baseball was with Pittsburgh.
and what did you do? What was your position before that?
Well, so before that, I was doing a cross of executive coaching and, some kind of sports psychology services for individual athletes.
Hmm.
And I always have maintained that individual private side to it, but what I was doing was work trying to pay the bills while I was chasing my dream, really. The reason I got into this was to work in the big leagues. And so it took me a while. I kind of have my own story of from grad school to the big leagues was about 8 years. And it was a continuous knocking on doors and guerrilla emailing people so Dave Littlefield was the GM of the Pirates when we were together. And I
Mhm.
didn't do this with Dave, but just if I'm giving an example, if I wanted to get Dave Littlefield's email back then, I would go dave.littlefield@pirates.com and it would bounce back. And then I'd go dlittlefield@pirates.com and it would bounce back. And I would keep doing different combinations until it didn't bounce back. And then I'd be like, all right, I got Dave Littlefield's email. And sometimes people would respond and sometimes they wouldn't. But, part one was finding contacts. And then part two was finding people that actually believed in what I was doing because that wasn't a lot of people back then. Um,
Right.
but I had one in particular, Allard Baird, if you know that name. He was
Mhm.
the GM of the Kansas City Royals. I think he's still involved with the Diamondbacks as like a senior advisor. But right when I got out of graduate school, I wrote letters to all 30 teams, someone at all 30 teams, and I sent a proposal that said, this is what I want to do. I want to help players with performance. I want to help them finish their college degrees. I want to help Spanish speakers learn English. Like a lot of things that are all like, oh, of course, we've got a whole department now, but nobody was doing that then. And I had this proposal that I wanted to do all of it. And Allard Baird called me and he said, I think you're onto something here. We're not in a position to do it, but I'm going to be in California, scouting some first rounders in the spring. Call me in January and I'll tell you where I'm going to be and when I'm going to be. I want to meet you. And, like stayed in touch with me and gave me hope when a lot of times I would make some progress and then I would get, kind of destroyed. And he would always call me back and he would always listen. And, I've never forgotten how much, just how hopeful and optimistic that made me that somebody in the game wanted to hear what I had to say.
That's super. I mean, you need that person to just respond.
Yeah.
Give me something. Give me a decline, like which you did politely, right? Like we don't have time now, but you're onto something, and that alone is enough to keep in touch with that person. And now you've made a connection, and he will respond to you from your future emails and reaching out. So when you got in with the Pirates, how much of what you did, because we're talking about stress management, how much of your job was you think, and they kind of go hand in hand, but the players thought it was performance enhancement, or were you teaching stress management?
Well, so before I even answer that, I think you've hit on something that maybe is close to another question, which is what I call it role confusion. There was a lot more of it back then, but there's still plenty of it now. There is mental skills and there's mental health, and they're different. And most places have a different person doing them. I've always thought that it should be two different people doing them because you want to walk into someone's office and know exactly which one you're dealing with. And so I've never done anything on the clinical side. But I think I've been trained enough and through plenty of experience had known where that boundary is and known when to go, okay, we need to go talk to the EAP because the EAP coordinator has always been the person that's job is to make sure that person is getting to a clinical resource. And we had an interesting one in Pittsburgh. His name is Frank Jans, and I don't even know if you still see him or if he's
I
around.
know Frank well.
But
Yeah, he worked for AHN
yeah,
for
I thought.
as well. Yep.
So Frank and I ended up working in Washington together too, and we worked very well together. And I think there have been plenty of times where someone comes to me and says, "I'm having trouble with X," and I go, "Okay, I, I'm not gonna go, that's not me. I'm gonna listen. I'm gonna go, tell me more, tell me, what's going on, and then I'm gonna go, okay, we need to go call Frank, or we need to call whoever Frank's role was, and then they go, well, why can't I work with you? And I go, well, if you hurt your hand, you wouldn't go to a foot specialist, right? Like so, like my job is to help you with performance. Frank's job is to help you with depression, anxiety, substance abuse, those kinds of things. Um, I think where baseball is getting it wrong right now, because baseball has actually built a mental health program now, but and maybe this isn't just baseball. I think maybe all society is seeing it this way. Um, Mental health is not for people with mental health crises. It's for everyone, right? And so I think most people do not need a mental health counselor, but they're stressed out and
Yes.
they're just trying to figure out, how do I get through my days and feel good about myself at the end of the day? And I don't think there's enough attention being paid to that, to mentally healthy people who want to stay mentally healthy. It's all about, we've got to catch depression, we've got to catch anxiety, which is very important. And I mean, I'll tell you, early in my career, um, I had maybe two potential suicide kind of situations. One of them was a hitter who had to adjust his helmet. Like he had OCD of some kind, but he just had to get his helmet right before the pitcher started his delivery. And if
Hmm.
pitcher, there was no pitch clock then, so if the pitcher took a while and he had done this and he had gotten his hands back, but now it's been a little too long. Then he's like, oh, now I gotta, and he would call timeout, or he would be in between, or he would take a pitch and sometimes take a strike because he wasn't ready. And
Hmm.
so, I knew this about him, and I saw him one day. This was in low A ball. He ended up playing in the big leagues, but I just said, hey, you doing okay with all this? And he's like, he was really frustrated. And I said, are you thinking about quitting? And he goes, no, I'd probably kill myself before I'd quit. And I'm getting goosebumps even now as I said that. I almost didn't catch it. Like I almost kept going, and then I just stopped for a second, and I just go, have you thought about that before? And he's like, what? And I said, killing yourself? And he starts crying. And he's like, it's not like I would ever do it, but sometimes I feel like it would be easier than quitting.
Wow.
And so we started, I was like, okay. And I heard him out and I was like, all right, we got to call Frank. And he's like, well, why do I need to call Frank? I'm like, listen, this is very serious. And our farm director was in town at the time. And I said, if you're okay with it, because he was very close with the farm director.
Hmm.
And I said, let's have him talk about. I want a lot of people to know about this. Um, that was the only time I had something like that happen in 15 years. Um, it's happening a lot now. It's happening a lot now. And I'll admit that, I remember we had one of these mental health meetings in New York with Major League Baseball where they brought in a specialist in suicide prevention who had all these protocol stuff, and my aunt, I went through it and I was like, I've had this once in 15 years. This isn't what we need. But you know who does need this? And this was the other part where I think it's baseball's got it wrong. A baseball player who's there every day sees 50 staff members and 25 teammates every day, and somebody's going to know if something's off usually. There's so many guys that are sitting at home that don't have anybody watching for signs. And those are the people that I think we need to be reaching out to. And for that matter, the when someone gets designated off the 40-man roster, I think that's like there should be a protocol for that. The process is someone calls you and says, "Sorry, we just designated you. Stay in your hotel room for the next 3 days. You can't go to the field. You can't work out. You can't talk to your coaches. You can't talk to your teammates. But don't leave because you might still be with us off the roster. So just sit there for the next 3 days and ponder your future."
Wow. Yeah, that's you're basically giving them a shovel. And you know.
And then someone claims them and they, pack up all their stuff, they fly across the country, they unload it in a locker, and 3 days later they get designated again because someone's playing games with the roster and trying to slip them in, not on the 40 man, but a guy that could help them. And so I think all of that needs, if people really care about mental health of players, they need to fix that. Um,
That's heavy.
yeah, but
That's heavy.
I mean, that's not quite your question.
Oh,
Your question is like how much of this was stress management, I think, or being stressed
yeah.
out. And I mean, I think when you're thinking about this is my only shot, and if I don't play well, I'm gonna get sent back. That is a lot of stress, right? And and I bet you know the answer to this. What's the only thing harder than getting to the big leagues?
And in the big leagues.
That's it. And they teach kids that from rookie ball, right? And so they put all this on there about like now you're in the big leagues, now you got to stay. And so I think the stress of now I have to stay makes people look inward and go, okay, well, what do I have to do to stay? And they start searching and changing what got them there.
Right. They have the old saying is, you dance with the girl you brought.
Mhm.
You get there and you just don't all of a sudden change everything. And I think some staffs they're whether they know it or not, they want to put their label on somebody, and whether it be a pitch or something in your swing that, I did this to Geoff or I did this to Frank, and now they're having success. But in a young ball player, they're just they're trying to stay and they want to listen, and they think that all of a sudden the game changes, when really it's everything outside the game that changes around you more so than not. You're seeing great talent in Double A and Triple A and in your summer leagues, or your winter leagues. But yeah, the ability to handle stress is a differentiator. The ability to now that I'm outside the game and I'm doing these talks to corporations and teams, number one, we need to be able to identify stress. Number one, not all stress is bad. There's eustress, and that's from muscle and being sore. That's an example. But there's distress. When you put your hand on a burner and it burns you. Or you're sad. You lost a loved one. Those are different types of stresses. And we teach about cortisol, and cortisol is a hormone. And when cortisol is high, we're stressed. Our stress levels are high. So we talk about different ways to manage that cortisol. And what I found, and I think again, I'm preaching to the choir, I really talk about breathing. And we talk about it all the time in baseball, is how do we slow the game down? How do we, when it's starting to unravel and the speed of the game picks up, how do we slow it down and get it back to a manageable level? Well, that's really what I'm teaching in regards to stress management to the people that I talk to every day. What are we doing to keep the game at a pace that we can manage it? And stuff goes on wrong with your day every day. Whether I get a flat tire or there's 20 inches of snow outside and I can't get out, things happen, and we need to be able to, overcome and improvise and all those things. But the whole breathing techniques, that's where we really start identifying stress, Geoff, and then teaching about cortisol and really paying attention to our breath. We take it for granted. Most people take it for granted. We're breathing 24/7, 365, and when we're not breathing, it's not a good thing. So we teach just to give it a little bit of love. You want to water the grass where you're standing. So pay attention to your breath and listen to a breath and listen to two, whether you're doing a box technique or, your take five technique. And then we go on from there. But it all starts with trying to lower the shoulders and do some things to manage the cortisol levels.
Well, I think maybe we need to talk off camera about some of this because you're giving me some ideas for maybe ways that we can measure some of the things that I work on with athletes in a way that shows maybe the physical response to it. But I think you're right. I think what's interesting to me is I think everybody knows that they're supposed to take a deep breath, right? Like, and I think it's actually one of the first questions people will ask me is like, do you do breathing techniques? And I'm like, well, oh yeah, of course. But this is where I think maybe I've got a little bit of a different spin on all of this sports psychology world is I think when I was coming up and I was going to Barnes and Noble and pulling the newest sports psychology, baseball psychology book off the shelf and then going, okay, I feel like I already saw this one, right? Because it's like, here's the chapter on routine, and here's the chapter on breathing, and here's the chapter on self-talk, and right, like all of these kinds of things. And so my thought has always been, yes, I'm gonna start and help you take a deep breath, and I certainly do that, and it's a central part of some of the routines that I'll have people do in the box or on the mound
Hmm.
or at their position. Um, but I've always wanted to know, why do you need a deep breath? Why is this stressing you out rather than how do I help you not be stressed? Because I'm only going to help you with that for the deep breath that you're taking. And after that, you're going to be stressed out again if we can't figure out why this is stressing you out.
Yeah. I, I guess for the people I'm dealing with now is because I'll collaborate with the stress management with overall wellness and performance. So we talk about stress as part of this talk, and then we talk about, okay, what are the things that we need to do every day? Eat, drink, and sleep. So we talk about those things, best practices. I'm not a registered dietitian. I know a lot about it, but like yourself, when I get those questions about meal planning and counting calories, I refer to Leslie Bonsi or people like Leslie. Those are the experts. It's not me you need, it's Frank Jans. Um, but we talk about those things because we have to do them every day. You don't have to go to your weight room or go to your Tai Chi class, but you need to eat, drink, and sleep. So after we talk about the breath, we talk about wellness and the best wellness practices to put you in a position to be able to dominate a day. Okay. And then we get into the longevity things. Not everyone has time. They're parents, they're Uber drivers, they're husbands and wives, and they're doing all the things that fill our day. And we all have 16 to 18 hours we're playing with where we're conscious. How are we going to divvy those up? Um, so we talk about being able to fit some of these wellness or strength training routines in. I don't squat 315 pounds for fives anymore. I'm doing body weight squats and I'm still lifting, but it's appropriate for my age and where I'm at in life and my goals, whether I'm trying to run a marathon or just trying to feel good into my 60s and 70s. Um,
Well, so
but
can
to
I ask you though, then, Frank? So, like, the examples you're giving me are kind of real world examples, right? So, I'm not an athlete. I'm not even running a marathon, right? I haven't run a marathon in 11 years, and I don't expect to run another one unless my brother gives me another crazy idea, right?
the
Um,
box.
but I want to feel healthy, right? And I think part of what you're describing and part of what I think the normal person in the world out there is feeling is, I don't have enough time, right? I have too many things to do and not enough time to do them. And so my own personal health and wellness probably gets sacrificed in that.
Mhm. Um, yeah, I think that's what, again, if I can't get there, I need to do these other three things better than I'm doing them so that I have the energy to get there, even if it's a half hour in the morning or 20 minutes during my work day. And here's another thing that I talk about, Jeff, is go find your happy. You know, you got to be happy with what you're doing, whether it be in your family life or your work life or anything else. Life is short, and the only person you have to really blame about your life is you. So if you're not happy where you're at, go find your happy because that smile it's in there. It needs to come out, and that's super important when we're talking about the reason, what's making me stressed.
Mhm.
There's something there. So we have to find it, deal with it, and make it better. We got to be able to fix that. Like you said, we can do all the techniques and do all the things, but if it always takes us back, it's like a shoulder injury. Yeah, you're injured. We fix it, but you start throwing again, and it comes back because we didn't find the root cause of the injury. It's because you don't have internal rotation on your landing hip, so every time you throw, you're just throwing with your arm, kind of thing. You just follow the chain.
That's right.
But it's super important when you're talking about what you're teaching. I think to your point, and then if you have one-on-ones, with your clients, the direction you're giving them. because most of the time they're coming to you and rarely come to you when it's good. It's always when things aren't going well
So
that
if
we're
you
trying
had,
to fix.
like, so if there's one takeaway for the average person out there, even if they don't have time to work out, even if they don't have time to do some of the things they want to do during the day, even if they're not happy, eat, sleep, drink better. That's a good starting point.
Find some education on, hydration practices, because most everyone in our society is dehydrated to some level. We don't drink enough fluids, and it's not just for cramping. It's how our brain functions and how our systems work because it needs to be properly hydrated. Um, Eating, and early and often, that's what we preach. That's our fuel. That's what we. It's not a. It's 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 physiologically impossible, Jeff, to get 5 hours of energy from 4 calories,
Yeah.
and that's what you'll see in a 5 hour energy is 4 calories without drugs and stimulants, herbal stimulants, drug stimulants in the bottle. So, learn to eat and learn how food is really your best medicine. It's going to keep you away from the doctor's office if you pay attention to what you're putting in your body, and then everything for me revolves around your sleep.
Mhm.
The power nap, the knowing the sleep cycle and how much sleep, because it's not always going to be 7 to 8 hours a night. Sometimes it's going to be shorter, and you got to be able to bridge the gap on those days and function at a high level on those days. But understand that if I keep getting those 4 and 5 hours nights and start stringing them together, your performance will suffer from it, and how your body functions will suffer from it. So, yeah, getting educated on how to do those three things better can kind of give you a little better foundation block to be able to make more changes in your life.
I think that's good because I think, if I go back to like the positive self-talk idea of, and even you saying find your happy, well, maybe I can't do that this week, but I could maybe I just start with drinking more water, right? Like at
Yep.
least I'll feel like, okay, that's a place I can start that I know I can accomplish. That I can be honest with myself and feel like, I'm still not happy, I'm still stressed out, but I'm making progress in one place.
Very doable. We want those tasks that are doable, and you don't want to put something out there like before you run the marathon. Well, maybe I should do a 5K first and then graduate to a 10K and a half. But yeah, it makes it so you can give them bits and not chunks to deal with. So yeah, absolutely. Focusing on one thing and getting better, do that for a week or two and then go on to the next. What's the next wellness habit I'm going to try to improve? Yeah, yeah, I agree 100%.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think we're past our time here, but
I
anything
know.
you want to anything you want to wrap up with?
No, man, this is great. I can't wait till the next one. I think just one, I remember this is dating back to our days standing in the outfield while BP was going on, and that's what this is just like conversations in the outfield during batting practice. So I think we covered some good stuff. I hope people tag on for a listen and while they're driving, to their workplace or they're taking a trip and listening to a little audio education. That they can take one thing from our conversation and our love and our expertises, from the bus rides you had back in middle school as a bat boy and a roadie clubby, to me, some of my journey through pro sports and what I'm doing in the what I call the real world, with AHN and all the great spectrum of clients that we get to see. People, man, it's helping people and the impactful work that we do, even though we're not in the seat anymore. It play what we know and what we learn plays in the real world, and that's what I learned when I got out. Like I got much more of an education than I thought being in the big leagues.
And I'll close with this, Frank, is, I think you were the first person I was really close to in one of these support roles that left the game. And I always followed what you were doing, and I thought you made such a successful transition. And we've seen lots of quote unquote teammates who haven't been happy and haven't been able to be successful when without the game. And you were always a really strong role model to me, and I think you've been that for a lot of people because you were able to take all of your experience and knowledge and apply it very quickly and into a new place.
Thank you. It's as you know, I mean, we touched on it a little bit. The transition out of the game isn't easy. You got to find ways to feed that, to feed to feed that part of you, and but I was you once. Strength training was the new kid on the block before you got there because it was always
I'm not
the
even a new kid on the block anymore, but yeah,
no,
right.
but you
Yeah.
were,
Yeah.
when they
I was.
brought mental skills in and okay, all of a sudden now we have a mental skills coach. Well, now that took the onus off the strength coach being a bad guy.
Yeah.
That's why I was so, and I'm just a nice guy too. I like making friends, but I could feel what you were going through, and I think you knew that because that's how we would kind of connect there in the outfield. But man, I love our friendship, and I think I know we're doing good things for people, man, and that's what we need. More Mr. Rogers in the world.
Yeah. Well, you go get yourself really far in the WBC, and let's stay in touch, and maybe we'll do this again every few months.
Sounds good. I like it. I like it. Best to you and your family, Jeff. Take care.
Thanks, you too.